Welcome to In the Know With Wala Blegay, the Congressional Black Caucus 2018 Special Edition, and it has been an awesome week. We attended the Congressional Black Caucus legislative conference, and it was really great because you had leaders, you had political leaders, you had advocates all in one room, journalists all in one room, in one building throughout the Washington D.C. area, talking about how to react in the Trump era. And Congressman Gregory Meeks, who we interviewed, who you're going to see the interview, said it best. It's time for us to focus on this election. This midterm election was really important, and that was the theme for a lot of the events throughout the Congressional Black Caucus Conference about the importance of midterm elections. President Obama has pushed this for years that in African American communities we do not come out and vote during the midterm. Now we come out in bigger numbers for the elections, the presidential elections, but the midterms are so important. Congress is so important in making sure that when it comes to the Supreme Court, making sure that we get the proper nominees on the Supreme Court, because the president has a nominee, but it has to go through Congress, has to go through Senate, and Congressman Meeks spoke about that, the importance of that, the importance of the Supreme Court. And also he talked about a really important point: organize, organize, organize. And that is actually some of the biggest themes in this conference, from what women's role, the black women's role, to even black journalists. We had April Ryan spoke about the importance of her role in this Trump era and some of the challenges that she has faced and how she's had to fight. And that goes for a lot of people who spoke today, even some of the possible presidential candidates. We're talking about Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker. And also throughout the convention, they talked about what we are looking forward to, not only now, but in 2020. And speaking of the midterm elections, one of the biggest forums that they had was the senators, many of the gubernatorial candidates. I mean, these are, before we didn't have much to look for. People didn't think we did. But not only are we looking at Congress, but we're looking at states, and we're looking at Ben Jealous in Maryland, running for governor in Maryland. He won his primary. And Stacey Abrams in the state of Georgia, and also Andrew Gillum, who in the state of Florida. Those were the focal points, that how important it is that we win at state levels, especially in a Trump era. It is important for us African Americans to support candidates in states so that they can actually get the message out too. So it was very inspiring. And one of the last inspiration, just thinking about the type of leaders here, I was able to speak with my good friend Mayor Maldron from the city of Capitol Heights, and he talked about he was there to just get resources. So we're talking about a lot of people were there not only just to meet leaders and hear about the message, but what can they bring back to their community. He talked about economic development, and he wasn't the only one. Many state legislators, many city officials came with looking for opportunities to bring back to their respective districts. So it was very inspiring to meet different people, and even African leaders. We're able to meet many African leaders who are now coming and trying to unite with African American leaders in order to look at what is the future even in the African community. So this was just an amazing conference, and I want to check out who I was able to meet and talk to, and share your experience with me. I want to know for those of you who attended, let me know what you thought. Welcome back to In the Know with Wala Blegay, and I'm here with the Congressman Gregory Meeks from the state of New York. And we're going to talk about today, he is going to give us a message. One of the reasons we're here is because African American political leaders are getting together talking about what should our community do in the Trump era. Just wanted to ask you, what is the message that you have to voters, to the African American community, especially on a day at the Congressional Black Caucus Legislative Conference?
Well, there's a number of issues that we can look at that is tremendously impacting the African American community. Number one, if you look at how he's undoing the criminal justice reform, but most importantly, the Supreme Court and what's going on with Kavanaugh. Because what this guy is doing, he's trying to take us back where it will take us 100 years to overcome the decisions that the Supreme Court will be making. It's, I tell everyone to remember history. Jim Crow wasn't something that was made up Plessy v. Ferguson and separate but equal came through because of the Supreme Court. And it took us almost 100 years to overcome that. Well, this president has made a deal with the ultra-right wing that he will put in whoever they want him to put in. And that's the pact that we're doing. And so if Kavanaugh gets in, and then there's a possibility because other members of the Supreme Court are older, then it will take us, these are lifetime appointments. And so that's why it's important in this election to make sure that we can win back the House and the Senate, so that, you know, right now we're fighting in the Kavanaugh situation, but we don't have the numbers. We've got to try to get some of the Republicans to flip and Democrats to hold. If we had the majority, we wouldn't have to worry about that. So that's significant. Be concerned about health care, you know, then this president is trying to roll back. Well, if you have a pre-existing condition, we forget where we were prior, where how families, and particularly African-American families, were going bankrupt when they got sick. And, you know, so we put in preventive health under the Affordable Care Act. That would be eroded. We allowed our children to be on their parents' health care up until age 26. That's threatened. And when you talk about pre-existing conditions, as many of you know, I've had a heart attack, had a heart condition. You're going to tell me that I now am not going to be able to afford insurance so I can take care of my health? All of that is at stake, and we need to put a check on this president. That's why voting is important, because elections do have consequences.
Right, and other than voting, what should African American community leaders be doing? What should they do in a time like this? What we've had?
Organize.
Right.
You know, when I was a kid growing up, you know, I can remember Dr. King right before his assassination. He asked, after the civil rights messages and the civil rights laws were passed, he then had a question. He says, where do we go now? Chaos or community? And that's where we are right now. That means organization. That means talking to one another and helping one another and lifting one another up. That means that we're trying to make sure that our institutions, our African American institutions, you know, whether it's a local civic group, that we've got to strengthen to make sure we're involved in there, whether it's our churches, that we're there lifting them up. It's organization that's important, so that we can make sure that we don't lose all the things we got, because we know that this president, that's the message he has when he says, let's make America great again. Right. We don't want to go back there where we were.
All right. Well, thank you, Congressman, for the great words, and you heard from him. Organize. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm waiting for a Grammy or an American Music Award for someone's take. No, but you heard him clearly understand what was going on. Yeah. So he out and out lied. So I mean, you have to be careful when you put that word out. But I'm assigning it to him now. I'm assigning it. So I mean, the news organizations. I mean, you know, Don Lemon will call it. Don Lemon will call him a lie for a long time. And I'm not mad at Don, but it took me a minute to come around. I'm like, okay, he's a liar. I tried to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Brown side.
That was a lie.